Toy Story 3 Movie Review. So this is another one of my scripted movie review series in which I look at an old review that I wrote on the weblog 10 years ago and try and make a YouTube video out of it for whatever that may or may not be worth. In this case, Toy Story 3, which came out in 2010. I saw it in the theaters at the time and wrote a review of it on the weblog at the time, which I'm going to go over now. Although, I suppose I should set the background by talking briefly about Toy Story 1 and Toy Story 2. Now, Toy Story 1 and Toy Story 2 I actually never reviewed on my weblog because they came out ages ago, back in the 1990s, before there was a weblog, or before they were popularly available. I didn't grow up with these movies. Toy Story 1 came out in 1995. I was already 17 at the time. So I wasn't quite interested in seeing it. And in fact, if I remember right, my initial impressions were, this has been done before. When I saw the trailer and when I found out about the premise. Because, it has been done before. The most obvious example is the Velveteen Rabbit, which is a famous children's book. I don't believe I've ever actually read the book, but when I was growing up in the 80s, there were so many different versions of this. TV specials, cartoon movies. I recall seeing this play out over and over again. And if memory serves, I couldn't tell you the name of it, but I think I saw in the 1980s a couple maybe puppet versions of very similar premises, toys come alive when the children go to sleep, type stories. Slight footnote, I'm probably out of touch on this one, but I don't remember hearing much about the Velveteen Rabbit recently. Perhaps since Toy Story came out, the new generation of kids doesn't need the Velveteen Rabbit anymore because they have Toy Story, which is essentially the same premise. Or am I just out of touch? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. I've been living abroad for a number of years, so I could well be out of touch. Anyways, I was already 17 when the first Toy Story came out. I wasn't particularly interested in the premise. I'd seen it all done before in the Velveteen Rabbit. In fact, I never really liked the Velveteen Rabbit all that much. It was kind of an interesting premise about toys coming to life, but it was also just so sad and sappy. And I just used to dread it when, a teacher would put on a movie of the Velveteen Rabbit at school or something like that. Because, that part at the end where the boy gets scarlet fever and they have to burn all his toys and... sorry, spoiler alert if you haven't watched the Velveteen Rabbit yet. I just thought, we don't... Why does it need to be so sappy? Anyways, Toy Story 1, I think I eventually saw when I was in college. Because somebody else had it on one evening in the dorms and I wasn't particularly interested in it, but I watched it because it was on and I was impressed with it, as most people are. It's a cliche to say that these Pixar movies appeal to adults as well as kids, but it's a cliche for a reason. These Pixar movies do have wide appeal. I thought it was funny. I thought the chase scenes were appropriately zany and quite fun. I quite liked it. Toy Story 2, I was in college when this came out, although I believe I was home for the holidays, and we saw it as a family over Christmas vacation. It was a tradition we always go see a movie on New Year's Day. Again, I didn't particularly want to see the movie. I mean, I liked Toy Story 1 well enough, but I had other movies I wanted to see in the theater. But the rest of the family wanted to see this, and we went, and I was really impressed with Toy Story 2, very pleasantly impressed. Again, I thought the funny elements of it were very funny, and I thought the plot of Toy Story 2 just kept getting crazier and crazier, like in a very good way. Like Andy's kind of off, and he's got his own subplot, but then they get a new Buzz Lightyear. and they have that conflict between the old Buzz Lightyear and the new Buzz Lightyear. And then Emperor Zorg gets out of his package at the toy store, and then he's chasing them around. The way it just kind of piled complication on top of complication, I thought was very fun for a children's movie. I haven't seen it since then. In fact, I haven't seen either of the movies since then, which means I am going off of memories here, which are about 20 years old. But had very pleasant memories of Toy Story 2 at the time. Now, Toy Story 3, there was a huge gap between them. Toy Story 2 was 1999. Toy Story 3 didn't come out until 2010. Which point I was in my early 30s, but I had such pleasant memories of Toy Story 2 that I decided it was worth the trip to the theater to see this. And I had a friend who was also interested in seeing it, and we went to the theater to see it. And yeah, it was good. I don't think it was as good as Toy Story 2, although again, I'm going off of memory here, so my memory could be wrong. I thought that there were some very good chase scenes in here. Could be very funny. The kids' toys and the different personalities they take on when they come alive is a subject that is ripe for satire, and Pixar does it really well. Sometimes the humor can come from playing up the stereotype, like the Ken doll, who is just a little bit too into fashion. I'm going back to Toy Story 2 here, but the Rock'em Sock'em robots that are a bit too argumentative. Again, that's kind of playing on the personality types that you would think these toys would have if they would ever come alive. But sometimes they go in the opposite direction, and the humor comes from the toys having the exact opposite personality type that you would expect. Like the teddy bear, who turns out to be evil. Or the Tyrannosaurus Rex, who turns out to be really mild-mannered. Or the clown named Chuckles, who turns out to be really sad. Although I guess maybe sad clowns are a bit of a cliche in and of themselves, but I'm still going to count it. Either way, it's good fun. And there's a lot of nostalgia mixed in with the humor and storytelling. With all the old toy callbacks that you see. For example, there's a character in here, initially I thought it was a glowworm, although I looked it up on Wikipedia, and it's not actually a glowworm, it's a bookworm, but I think it's meant to call back to these glowworm toys that were popular in the 1980s. I never had one of them, but you know, I remember them. I remember seeing the commercials on TV, I remember seeing them in the toy store. I remember seeing them around even though I never had one of them. So as soon as I see one of them, I immediately recall elements of my childhood. And there are a lot of toys in here like this, and then toys from before my era, stuff that would be nostalgic to my parents' generation. I got a kick out of seeing the glowworm be an evil librarian. I got a few laughs out of Ken, who kept insisting that he wasn't a girl's toy. And I like that chatter telephone that kept talking like a 1940s gangster film. It was all good fun. I'm not sure that the chase scenes and the zaniness equaled the previous two films, although that's subject to my faulty memory. I'm going to have to rewatch all these films to give a definitive judgment. But I thought it was pretty decent, regardless. The one thing that grained on me, however, was the overdone sentimentality of Toy Story 3. There are a lot of really tragic things happening in the world right now. And I feel like as an adult, I've acquired a fair amount of my own problems in life. So when I come to a movie like this, I feel like I'm going to it for escapism and entertainment, and I feel like I have a limited amount of emotional investment that I'm prepared to invest in a scenario such as toys feeling abandoned because their teenager has outgrown them. I don't know, maybe I'm bringing a cynical adult view into this, But I would have preferred that they stayed with the lighthearted escapist element of these stories. And I know some sentimentality has always been present in the previous films as well, but that's not been my favorite part of the previous films either. And I know if you do the math on this, it was 10 years since Toy Story 2, and he probably is going off to college and outgrowing his toys. But it's a cartoon, it doesn't need to be in real time. The Simpsons have stayed the same age for the past 30 years. You could have easily just kept this when Andy was a child and kept the more lighthearted escapist element of the film. I know that in real life, toys get thrown away or broken, but it's a cartoon. We don't need to see this happening in real time. And, in real life, toys aren't really alive anyway, so there's no need to be too realistic about this. I feel like I didn't go into this movie to see a long, drawn-out story about toys coming to grips with their own mortality, which was a big part of this film. I don't know. I didn't like it. On the other hand, I'm sure somebody is saying, yeah, but in order for it to be a story, there needs to be a character arc. And, okay, fair point. I would have appreciated a more light character arc, but I can kind of see where people are coming from on that. It wasn't what I wanted, which isn't to say it's not legitimate for somebody else, but it wasn't what I wanted. So, as we were walking out of the theater, my friend who I had gone to see this movie with asked me what I thought about it. I said, it loses a point for gushy sentimentality. And perhaps it loses another point for being in unnecessary 3D, which isn't a problem anymore now that it's out on video and streaming. But if you remember when this came out in the theaters in 2010, it was part of that wave of movies that were in 3D for no reason. So I said, I'm going to give it a solid 7, maybe an 8. 8 out of 10. And I think I would stick to that rating even today.